Thank you, Chairman Conley, and I appreciate this opportunity to yet again monitor the massive federal government IT spend. And I also want to extend our thanks to the witnesses who are to both panels who are here with us today as we discuss the 13th for the 13th time the most recent iteration of the FITARA scorecard. I'd like to touch on two areas that stand out on the current scorecard. First is the data center consolidation, and then the enterprise information solutions, or EIS. First of all, does the data center consolidation metric still serve a purpose today? I think that's a fair question, something that we really need to consider. And certainly, absolutely, don't get me wrong, Mr. Chairman, the early stages of FITARA, no question, this metric was relevant. It was forward-looking, and it dealt with efficiencies and savings within our agencies. But with all the agencies now receiving an A on this current scorecard, I think it's a fair question as to whether indeed we've reached a point of diminishing returns and need to legitimately consider where do we go from here. And Mr. Chairman, you and I have talked about this many times. I appreciate your strong feelings about this issue and your view that the good grades perhaps reflect a good move in the right direction. But I'm eager to hear today from our witnesses as to whether there are valid reasons for us to perhaps shift our focus elsewhere and go to the next level. With respect to the enterprise information solution metric, again, I think we have to ask what's happening. 15 of the 24 agencies are failing, and I hope we can get answers as to why this is the case and how this subcommittee can get things back on track. And beyond the current scorecard, I believe it's time to take a hard look at how FITARA can evolve from this point. During last week's FSMA hearing, I specifically asked the GAO witness whether the current FITARA metrics give an accurate picture of the agency's security posture, and the clear answer was no. So I think, again, that's an indication that we need to evolve and go to the next step, and I'm curious as to the panelists today what their thoughts in that regard may be. Of course, we are all aware of recent cyber attacks such as SolarWinds and Log4j. We've got ample illustrations as to our vulnerability. Not that we need reminders, there's plenty of them out there, but security is absolutely one of the top areas for oversight. We need to keep that as our priority. And we here in the subcommittee need a clear picture as to how safe agency systems actually are. I think that's a concern for all of us, and we, I believe, need to perhaps evolve more into that direction. As we look forward, taking advantage of the effort to update the underlying FSMA law, we should re-examine the scorecard metrics and think about how cyber assessments can better serve our purposes. And there are surely areas that are not reflected in the scorecard that I believe we at least should consider, such as the state of federal IT modernization, such as workforce issues. Another point is customer satisfaction, all these things we've discussed in the past. But are these IT dollars actually delivering results for our constituents? Again, I'm eager to hear from our witnesses today on all of these and other issues. I think a related question is twice a year the right cadence for this review? Does a 6-month interval actually give agencies enough time to change course if they need to? Are there other reasons to move this perhaps to an annual event? So I look forward to working together, Republicans, Democrats, federal agencies, private sector, all stakeholders, to improve our oversight mechanisms to ensure federal IT is efficient and safe. Again, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your commitment to this issue, and I look forward to today's testimonies. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to go quickly, and if the panelists, if we could try to answer quickly, I want to get as many other members on here as well. Ms. Harris, let me start with you. I mentioned a little while ago in my opening statement that in the FISMA hearing last week, I asked the GAO witness whether the FITARA metrics gives an accurate picture of the agency's security posture, and of course the answer was no. So my question to you real quickly, can you give some specific suggestions that this committee needs to just get a better assessment on the issue of cybersecurity?
Sure. So I think that's, as Mr. Spires and Mr. Powner had identified, I think using the administration's executive order on cyber as a basis for how we take a look at evolving the cyber metric, I think that's a good idea. In terms of what is currently not captured in the current metric, IT supply chain is one example. We've done work for you very recently to take a look at that pulse check across the federal government. So we have work that can support either evolving the metric to expand into supply chain, as well as on expanding to take a look at more enterprise-wide cyber initiatives. We have ongoing and recent work that we could certainly support in those areas.
Okay, regarding the enterprise information solution metric, 15 out of 24 has already been mentioned today, are failing. Do you have any thoughts as to why these grades are so low in so many agencies, and what needs to happen to get back on track?
Yeah, so I think similar to what occurred with software licensing, it just wasn't a top priority for the agencies. When you take a look at the history of the past two telecommunication transitions, agencies have sort of dragged their feet in this initiative and really did not make it a priority until they were close, very, very close to the deadlines for closing out those current set of contracts. So I applaud this subcommittee for including EIS as part of the scorecard, and we need to just continue to push and put the heat on the agencies to make it a priority. Okay,
Mr. Spires, let me hit you real quickly in the context of evolving the cybersecurity category. You stated in your testimony, quote, agencies should emphasize effectively measuring cybersecurity risks associated with cloud development and moving beyond static compliance-based checklist. How do we do that?
Well, thank you for that question, sir. There are absolutely numerous tools now available from companies, product companies, that can do more real-time monitoring of what's going on in the cybersecurity environment. And let me just say, one of the big problems we had with FISMA, and the law was originally in the early 2000s passed, we got into a bit of a compliance kind of checklist mentality, and we just need to move beyond that. Things are moving so quickly. Your cybersecurity posture is changing so rapidly. You need to be able to use automated tools to be able to help measure that. Okay,
very good. Final question, Ms. Kent. You had mentioned that one thing that I've brought up several times on these scorecard hearings is the need to gauge customer satisfaction. And you had mentioned that we need some metrics to go across other industries, I'm assuming private sector and so forth. So can you expand on this a little bit as to how we might adopt some of these metrics in our government?
Certainly. Thank you for that question. We already have pieces around websites being mobile friendly, 508 compliant. Do they have data-driven functionality? Do we have secure connections? Kind of goes to some of the questions that already been asked. Those are things that we might consider, in the near term. And in fact, some agencies, because they've been part of law, have already started tracking those themselves. Specific, as we look at common measures across industries, ease of use, and that is something that's pointed out in the EO, and then how effective they are for the intended service they're delivering, whether it's information or a payment or some type of process. Those types of things are in motion, and we could measure those very quickly. And in those areas, there's metrics that are already both in government and then widely used outside, and they're meaningful to constituents.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, we've got some other questions that we'll submit, but I want to yield back to other members and thank you for this hearing again.